Hello, everyone, and welcome in to another episode of the RTI Recruiting Podcast. I am Nathaniel Rutherford, the managing editor of RockyTopInsider.com, and I am joined with our special guest of VR2, both Matt Ray and Brandon Martin. They're at VR2 with the Sports Illustrated family. We are very appreciative to have them on here and very happy to see them growing and joining the SI family. Guys, this is going to be a fun podcast. I was thinking, it was weird, I was thinking just earlier this past week, I guess around Monday or Tuesday of this past week, that there hadn't been a ton of really super positive Tennessee news in recruiting. Not that there'd been anything really negative, but we'd seen a few other targets kind of commit elsewhere, and I just started to wonder what this 2021 class really was going to bring for Tennessee. And then we get to the weekend, and we see Darrell Taylor get drafted in the second round, kind of mid-second round on Friday to the Seattle Seahawks. And then 2 days later, the guy who Tennessee has been really, preaching and selling that you can come in and play like DT and be like Taylor in our defense, Dillon Brooks commits to Tennessee. 5-star from Alabama, at the number one, according to 247 Sports Composite Rankings, the number one prospect from the state of Alabama. I think number two in their rankings, and the regular rankings, and I think number three on Rivals. Regardless, he's one of, if not the best prospect in the state of Alabama in the 2021 class. A 5-star, the first 5-star to commit to Tennessee in this cycle. I don't think we can I don't think we can oversell how big of a commit Dillon Brooks is. But it's not just because you look at edge rushing and say that's been the kind of the biggest need for Tennessee, and they've more or less kind of missed on their top prospects as edge rushers over the last few cycles. They did do a good job of getting Mormon Joseph and Tyler Barron in 2020, but they still missed on B.J. Ojolari. They missed on a couple other guys. You look back at Boygby, they missed out on as well as a 5-star committed Alabama and signed with him. So you look at some of these other guys Tennessee's missed on. It's not going to be easy. They're going to have to recruit and keep Dillon Brooks in this class, but getting Dillon Brooks to commit and the upside he brings, I think it's huge. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts on it, because we obviously have a lot of stuff on RockyTopInsider.com, but I want you all to share. Matt, you can go first. Brandon, you can go after that. But how big of a commitment is this for Tennessee?
Yeah, this is a big commitment for Tennessee. I mean, everything you said pretty much sums it up, but you're talking about a guy that Jeremy Pruitt and company have recruited hard since they arrived on campus. I mean, Brooks started to blow up, picked up an offer late February of 2019, and has just continued to be recruited by Tennessee. It seems like he's been on campus every single time that a dead period is ended, and I've talked about that. I'm big on tracking visits, and every time a dead period ended, Brooks would go to Tennessee first. And then he comes to the first game of the season. He watches Tennessee take a tough loss to Georgia State, but it never deterred him. Talking to him after that visit, he kind of mentioned that, hey, I see what they're actually telling me. They actually need my help, He comes back for the Georgia game, and going into that game, he wanted to see Tennessee fight. Well, they did in the first half. They just ran out of steam, and he continued to see a need. He comes back for the Vanderbilt game and sees a team that's on a hot streak. And if you go back to that weekend, that's rivalry weekend. So he comes to Tennessee over going to the Iron Bowl. So that speaks, a lot of volume in itself. And then now Tennessee's continued to recruit him over the winter months, and it's finally paid off. But, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's one of the top 20 prospects to ever commit to your program as far as rankings go. So this is a really big get for Tennessee, and at the position of need, it just can't be stressed how important the edge rushers are in Jeremy Pruitt's defense. You're looking at a guy who's lanky, rangy, has a explosive first step, can disrupt passing lanes, really can just work offensive tackles to death, and can cover. So, I mean, what more can you ask for in this guy?
I don't think there's a whole lot more you can ask for as far as what Brooks brings to the table. And it's important, and you made a really good point, Matt. This guy has been one of Jeremy Pruitt and company's top priorities for at least a calendar year or more now. This is a guy they've had circled, they have really, really wanted. He is a fantastic player. This is a huge, huge, huge get for Tennessee. And when you start talking about what he brings on the field, put on the tape, his first step is unbelievable. When he comes out of his stance, it is just, if you're an offensive tackle, I don't know what you do with him. Incredibly fast. He can run completely around you. He can attack your outside shoulder. If you set too wide, he comes back across your face and goes to the inside. And then you've got multiple examples on film of him getting up under a big 300-pound tackle and bull rushing them all the way back to the quarterback, just bulldozing them into the ball carrier. This guy is as complete a pass rusher as you're going to find. He's a very, very good run defender. Like you said, Matt, he's also able to cover. I think this guy is the best pure pass rusher that Tennessee has gotten a commitment out of. And if they can hold on to him, probably since Derek Barnett, this Brooks is special. He is a special, special rusher. And when you can talk about coming in and filling that role that Darrell Taylor played so well, just got drafted into in the second round of the NFL, when you're talking about filling those shoes, he's a plug-and-play player. He fits right in there. And then when you start talking about the rest of this class, now Tennessee has got a 5-star in the boat, a legitimate, bona fide, everybody in the country agrees, 5-star in the boat. He's close with a lot of other guys. This is going to get some momentum. When these elite guys start committing, when these really high-end guys start committing, the others take notice. Mm-hmm. So I think this is going to make things interesting down the stretch as Tennessee goes on with this recruiting cycle. I think you're going to see some other guys have their eyes opened a little.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that here in a little bit, talking about the impact of him committing, what that can do for Tennessee's class moving forward in the next few months here and stuff before the season starts, hopefully on time. But I want to go back to something you were saying there, Brandon. I mentioned this in my impact report on RocketTopInsider.com, and I haven't got a chance to read yours, but I'm sure you guys did at VR2, kind of talking about what kind of impact he can make immediately. I think, unless we see Tyler Baird and Morven Joseph just have a breakout freshman season or have take a lot of strides heading into 2021, I truly think Brooks will be making a big impact as a true freshman, maybe even starting. It depends. He does have some things I think he needs to work on. He's a little raw in some areas. I like to see him kind of wrap up more in his tackles, but his ceiling is about as high as anyone I've seen this coaching staff land. I would say ceiling-wise, what he could do with his potential might be as high as what Trey Smith was, because Trey Smith obviously was a 5-star, was the top recruit out of Tennessee, was considered to be potentially a freshman All-American, and then he did live up to that hype. Dillon Brooks has that kind of same potential, in my opinion. I think he's a guy who can come in and be a freshman All-SEC, potentially a freshman All-American, as long as the playing time will be there for him, and I think it will be. I love his frame. I love his long arms. He's 6'5", 220. Needs that some more weight. But I mentioned this in my piece. If Vol fans have wondered, I know I myself have wondered, what would Darrell Taylor's career have been like had he been here, had Tennessee had Jeremy Pruitt and the staff, all 4 years or all of his entire Tennessee career? What would Darrell Taylor have actually been able to do? Because you look at what he did his last 2 years at Tennessee, totaled 16.5 sacks and I think 21 tackles for loss in 2 seasons. And he only had like 3 tackles for loss and I think 3 sacks, something like that. In his first 2 years at Tennessee. Obviously, he redshirted 1 year, played sparingly in 2016, but he was a major role in 2017. I think this will be the case where you see, for all those questions of what could Darrell Taylor's career have been like with Pruitt and this staff for 4 years or so, I think you're going to see those questions answered with Dillon Brooks. I think as long as he stays healthy, this staff is going to do an excellent job of developing him. I trust this staff immensely more to develop players than I do Butch Jones' staff and what they did at Tennessee. And I like that comparison of Derek Barnett. I think Brooks is actually more athletic than Barnett, and Barnett was surprisingly athletic considering he was just kind of a top 200 4-star. He was very athletic, had a very good speed rush. When I look at the film of Brooks, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, Brandon, when I look at his film, his bend and the way he gets around the edge is elite. He has some other moves he needs to work on and stuff, but his bend off the edge and his explosiveness, like you said, his first step, that is very hard to beat. And he gets away with some I guess a little bit of lackadaisical technique in high school because he is just supremely talented and can. But even in college, that first step that he has and the way he can bend around linemen, that's going to be tough for even some of the top tackles in the SEC to really guard, I think.
when you talk about Brooks, I said I think he's the best pass rusher Tennessee has had since they got Barnett. An important difference between he and Barnett is Derek Barnett was a technician.
Yes.
Derek Barnett was an absolute, from the time he stepped on the field as a true freshman in that first game, Derek Barnett was a technician, particularly with his hands. And I had a good friend who used to talk about he could run full speed under a picnic table. That was Derek Barnett. Brooks is not as technically sound as Barnett was, but I think Brooks is more athletic. I think Brooks is more athletic than Darrell Taylor.
Yeah.
He's more athletic than Darrell Taylor when he got to Tennessee as a 4-star. When he comes out of his stance, it is like he is shot out of a cannon. He just explodes out of his stance. It's like a sprinter coming off. And I don't know what you do with that kind of first step if you're an offensive tackle. Normally when you see a guy who just in one step is at full speed and is in your chest or on your shoulder as a tackle, you're going to try to take a deeper set. You're going to set yourself back. You're going to let your weight be your friend. Because normally when you see a guy that fast, it's a smaller build guy. And Brooks is smaller build than a lot of these defensive ends. Normally it's a smaller build guy, and you can use your size to your advantage. You can overpower those guys. The difference in Brooks is he may not be as big as some of these other defensive ends, but he's stronger than all of them. If you sit back like that, he's just going to put his hands under your shoulder pads at the chest and ride you back to the ball carrier. The speed rush is elite. If he decides to attack your outside shoulder and come around the end, he's as good as there is in this class at that. But the thing that makes him such a special pass rusher is the ability to hit you with that bull rush and it still works. He can be an elite power rusher as well. It's not as good as the speed rush, but it's still very, very good. And that ability to be smart enough to attack you in different ways. He sets you up, and you can watch it on some of his film. He'll come outside, and then hit you inside with the bull rush. He'll work you outside and then come across your face. He'll try to work the inside gap. He'll try to shoot there, and then he'll spin and go around the outside or just flat beat you to the corner. If you have a slow-footed tackle in the SEC, and we know this, you get some of those guys. It doesn't mean they're bad tackles, doesn't mean they're bad football players, but if you get, typically we think of a right tackle as a guy who's a little bit bigger, a little better against the run. Their feet are not quite as quick and not quite as sound. They don't tend to be as good in pass protection. Or if you get more of a run-blocking mauler tackle, Dillon Brooks is going to kill them in a known passing situation. If he knows he's going to get, even in the SEC, if he knows he's going to get to tee off and come after a quarterback because it's 3rd and long and you got to throw and your tackle's a little slow, I don't know what you do with him. You have to double him. You have to put a tight end or a running back or both on that side. This kid is special coming off the edge. And I can only imagine that Jeremy Pruitt and Derek Ansley are salivating over how they're going to get to use him and throw him at people.
Yeah, he's very versatile, very athletic, and I don't think it was a coincidence that you saw Darrell Taylor get drafted 2nd round on Friday and then him commit on Sunday. I don't think that was a coincidence at all. I think he saw that and thought, they've been selling me that they can use me like him. I think I can even come in and be even better than Darrell Taylor and be a 1st-round pick. I don't think it was a coincidence that the timeline of all this happened the way it did. Matt, I want to switch gears just a little bit, still kind of in the same Dillon Brooks vein here, but this isn't just a big get because it's an edge rusher and because it's a position of need and it's a 5-star. Tennessee went into Alabama and stole away the top recruit out of Alabama, and it wasn't like the Tide and the Tigers didn't want him. He had legit offers from Alabama and Auburn. Alabama and Auburn both wanted him. LSU wanted him. He had offers from Georgia, from Florida, from Oklahoma, from you name it. He had top offers from, I think, USC also offered him. He offers from across the country from some of the top programs, in college football. This is huge for Tennessee in the state of Alabama. They already had 4 kids committed from Alabama. Now Dillon Brooks is the 5th, and obviously right now he's the crown jewel of this class. I went back and looked, and just from the by position break or by state breakdown on 247 Sports, and some of that's can sometimes get a little wonky because if you have a kid from the junior college ranks, sometimes it counts where he is in junior college, sometimes it counts where he's from high school. So this may be slightly inaccurate, but from what I saw, From the 2014 class through the 2020 class, Tennessee signed a grand total of 6 players from the state of Alabama, and 3 of those came in the 2020 class with Pruitt in them. That's 6 in a span of, 6 or 7 years? In this one class alone right now, of course we're still in April, things could obviously change between now and then, Tennessee has 5 players committed from the state of Alabama. They're not just some scrubs, they're not just guys that, Auburn, Alabama, other SEC schools didn't want. You have 5-star Dillon Brooks, you have 4-star Jordan Mosley, you have borderline 4-star Rock Taylor, who I think is a underrated prospect who's going to climb up the rankings. You have safety Edwin White, who I think is underrated as well, and you have cornerback Jay Jones. Matt, to me, it's important in a lot of aspects, but the way Tennessee has targeted Alabama and that they finally have found success in Alabama, I think that is just as important as the position Brooks plays, because Tennessee has been trying for a while to get into Alabama, and especially with Pruitt getting here, they swung and missed a lot on Alabama kids in the 2018 class when they first got here. In the 2019 class, they had a little more luck last year. This year, they still might not be done. You look at Jeremiah Williams, you look at Trinity Bell and a couple other kids in the state. They may not be done getting kids out of Alabama. I think this is just as important for that state as it is Tennessee getting a big-time get at a position of need.
Yeah, I think it's important for that state too. I mean, when you look back at the 2020 class, 2 kids in the top 10 from the state of Alabama got away, and one was Eric Shaw, who was number 10, and neither one of those schools, Alabama or Auburn, really pushed for him. Now, E.J. Williams, he was a different case. Alabama never pushed terribly strong there, but Auburn did, but he ultimately ended up going to Clemson. But Tennessee went into Alabama last year and won a recruiting battle for D. Beckwith, but it wasn't against either one of those schools. It was against Florida. That was and Ole Miss hung in that forever, but they weren't able to make anything stick. But they won that battle. But man, for this state going in and taking away the top player right now is just it's crazy. You have, when you look at it, the only 2 schools that have done it in probably the past decade are Clemson and Georgia.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that speaks volumes in itself. And it's inside that state and on a national level, it's really going to get it's really going to get this class rolling, in my opinion.
Yeah, and on that same note, we'll go ahead and transition here to, I guess maybe our last subject. Kind of depends on how much longer we want to talk here, but looking just beyond Alabama, and Brandon, we were talking about this, all 3 of us were talking about this before we hit record. The perception of Tennessee's 2021 class has, I wouldn't say maybe dramatically, but it has changed quite a bit because of this commitment. You mentioned it earlier. This kind of commitment gets guys to pay attention. We have all on VR2's Twitter account, on my Twitter account, on the RTI Recruiting Twitter account, on your all's accounts, Brandon and Matt. We've all been retweeting different reactions from different prospects. You had 5-star Terrence Lewis, who is another pass rushing prospect and outside linebacker out of Florida. He tweeted about Dillon Brooks coming to Tennessee and saying #GBO ? With the eyeball emojis. You had 4-star highly rated running back Cody Brown tweet out the eyeball emojis with Dillon Brooks' commitment. You had Kamar Wilcoxon, a guy who used to be committed to Florida, who Tennessee's been targeting, also tweet about Dillon Brooks committing to Tennessee. Brandon, this could be, I don't know that Tennessee gets all 3 of those guys, but we've seen those and a few other people also tweeting about, or a few other prospects tweeting about Tennessee getting Dillon Brooks. I think this could be the turning point. You look at the 2019 class, when the moment when Tennessee got Wanya Morris at the beginning of May, that's kind of when that class really started to get more attention. It was when Wanya committed to it, gave Tennessee their 5-star crown jewel right there in the beginning of May. This is right here at the end of April. It's right around the same time Dillon Brooks commits. And I wonder if this will end up having the same effect of what Wanya was able to do with that 2019 class.
Well, you look at what Tennessee's got. They've got a lot of guys that are highly rated. They're in a really good spot with. We've talked before. We kind of think we're just waiting to win on Julian Nixon.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like just win on Kamar Wilcoxon. It felt like Cody Brown might be a bit of a longer shot, but the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's starting to feel like he's really warming up to Tennessee, and Tennessee's is in a good spot there. A guy like Malachi Bennett is another guy that I think Tennessee's in a really good spot with. Someone else that had reacted, and I think this came through our group thread, Matt. was Dietrich Pennington reacted to this as well, the big 4-star, borderline 5-star offensive defensive lineman out of Memphis. You've got some guys that Tennessee has really pushed for, they've really worked for, that they want pretty bad, that are taking notice of this. Brooks is close with a lot of these guys, and if you can get Brooks not just in the boat, but solidly in the boat to the point that he's recruiting other guys for you. If he becomes that Keyshawn Lawrence, that Harrison Bailey, that Cooper Mays, or what Wanye was in the 2019 class, then all of a sudden you're talking about not just a good player, but a really good player who's highly respected by his peers, helping to recruit for you. Tennessee's in a good place with a lot of these prospects, and landing Dillon Brooks changes the perception of this Tennessee class, I do think, in a big way. I think it changes the perception of this class in a big way. I think it changes who they can get. I think it may change how quickly you see them land some of these guys. It's really going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be fun to watch because you have guys that for example, if you're a guy like a Dietrich Pennington and you may be playing on defense, Pennington can play offense or defense, but if you're Pennington, you can play on defense. When you know you've got Brooks out on your side, if that's the guy you're going to play with, in a sub package, his hand's in the dirt, he's next to me, or I'm bumped out at end in a base 3-4, and Brooks is the linebacker on my side. Who do they double team? Who do you double? And Pennington has to know that. In our write-up, one of the guys that I talked about was Amari Thomas. Can you imagine putting Amari Thomas and Dillon Brooks on the same side of a defense? Who do you double team? Because it has to be both of them. You can't block these two guys one-on-one. And if you're an elite talent, you're like, I can play with someone like this who's going to help me and who's going to help make this defense dominant, that changes your perception. That changes how you look at a class. That changes how you view Tennessee going forward. And if Tennessee comes out and has a pretty strong season, Pruitt and Ansley have got the reputations that they do as defensive coaches. Tennessee's defense ended in the top 25 in the nation last year despite a really tough start. If they come out and look good this fall, and if they look like they have put the offense together and have that working and can win some ball games, we talked last year. We felt like Tennessee's recruiting class last year could have been better than it was if they hadn't face planted out at the start of the season. If you avoid that this year, if you have a pretty good season, do what you are expected to do, take some steps forward, you can land some big names in this class. You can get some more difference makers like Brooks. I really believe that.
No, I 100% agree. It's gonna be very, as you said earlier, very fun and interesting to kind of watch and see what all happens with this class. There's a lot of twists and turns that we're going to see happen in this class. And to kind of finish out the podcast here, there's one other thing that while I have both of you with me here on the podcast, I wanted to talk about a couple other names that have been getting a lot of attention with Tennessee lately. That has been, well, actually, three names, I think. That's been Caden Salter, the 4-star quarterback out of Texas, who seems like Tennessee is trending very well for. He came out and said he's going to announce in May. Talk about, I think, a top 3, and Tennessee was one of them, and Tennessee seems to be in a very good spot with him. You also have Junior Colson, an in-state linebacker, who seems like Michigan's kind of the team to beat, but Tennessee obviously not giving up there. And then Javar Ritzie, who is a 4-star, another defensive end, another edge rusher out of North Carolina, who just released his top 5 schools, and Tennessee was included in that list. Matt and Brandon, I want to get your thoughts on those 3. Of those 3, who do you think Tennessee has the best chance of getting? And I guess, what are your thoughts on Junior Colson? Because I've seen a lot of different thoughts about him and leaning towards Michigan. I think there's been a couple of crystal ball predictions too. But what about Salter, Colson, and Ritzie? And where do you kind of think Tennessee is with those 3?
Out of the 3, I'll go with Salter for the best shot to land. Tennessee got the last visit there. He's a guy that doesn't say a whole lot, but I do think Tennessee's probably in the best position to land him. They're going to continue to recruit elite quarterbacks, and I think whatever happens in May with the NCAA transfer rule, and if JT Daniels ends up on Tennessee's roster, that room's going to look a little different. But I think for now, I think Salter is probably considering Tennessee the most. I wouldn't call it over with, but I think that Tennessee's the team to beat right now. I'm torn on Colson. Talking to him, he really genuinely likes Tennessee. He sees the opportunity. They've answered a lot of his questions about on the field stuff. His family loves Michigan. They love the academic side of it. And that's kind of the stage of where he was the last time I spoke with him, was looking at academics, looking at what every school has to offer. And he had spent the last 2 days, the last time I talked to him, just taking academic tours, talking to academic advisors with his family. They were on every call, listening to everything. So that was going to be interesting. Tennessee's not going to go away there. They're recruiting him heavily. Jeremy Pruitt is in the fold there. That's usually always a good sign for the Vols. I think he's one of the best recruiting head coaches in the country. And I think they have a chance to win. And they've gone head-to-head with Michigan before, and they have usually won. So we'll see if they can close out the deal again. But Michigan's not going to go away easy in this one. Neither is Tennessee. That's going to be a fun battle all the way until signing day. Those two teams are going to be right at the top until December, and nothing will probably be official either way. And Ritzy, Tennessee's battling hard there. They're making a lot of inroads in the state of North Carolina. I just don't see him slipping out of the Tar Heel state.
To be fair, that North Carolina has been. We talked about it in a previous podcast that that was a big state of interest for Tennessee and big state of emphasis. But man, the Tar Heels with Mac Brown, they've suddenly turned into a very strong recruiting. I won't say juggernaut, but very strong recruiting program over there in their own state, and they've been doing a really good job of keeping a lot of those in-state prospects.
Yeah.
Brendan, is there anything else you'd like to add about those three?
As far as Salter, I'm like Matt. He was on Tennessee's campus right before everything shut down. Matter of fact, I think he might have been here and leaving as it was shutting down. Yeah. So Tennessee is the last place he was at. Now, there's a lot of programs that want him. I do think Tennessee's in a good place there. Colson, I think Tennessee is going to get Junior Colson. I know his family likes Michigan. I know Junior likes Michigan, and Michigan has really pushed there. I just, at the end of the day, think Tennessee is going to win that. I think the proximity to home is going to be a factor in that before it's over with. I think Walker Merrill is going to be a factor in that before it's over with. I think Michigan's going to be in there. I think Tennessee's going to win this thing in the end. I have said in our group thread, I wouldn't be. I think if Colson commits to Tennessee, there's a good chance that it's probably done. I think if Colson commits to Michigan, Michigan is going to have to fight Tennessee off for him all the way to signing day, and I don't know that they'll keep him. I think that if he decides to stay in Tennessee and go to Tennessee, I think there's a good chance he'll probably shut things down earlier. If he goes to Michigan, Tennessee is going to make them really work to keep him. It's going to be hard on them to do that, I believe. And then I'm like Matt, because Mac Brown has just been on a tear, and I don't think that they're going to get Jahvaree Ritzie away from North Carolina and Mac Brown. It seems like the Tar Heels have just gotten everybody they've wanted for the past 6 weeks. The only team that I can think of that's been hotter than them has been Ohio State, and what they're doing is ridiculous. But North Carolina is not far off in the amount of crazy with what they have been pulling. So I do think Ritzie probably winds up staying home. I think Mac Brown keeps another one home.
Well, I would love for Tennessee to get Junior Colson. I think he's a really good kid, a really good player, and obviously Caden Salter would be a big get for Tennessee's quarterback room as well. But I think it's going to be kind of where we end up ending this podcast. A lot of good news for Tennessee over the weekend. NFL draft, Tennessee gets 2 guys taken. Juwan Jennings, I think a very big steal in the draft going 7th round. Darrell Taylor going 2nd round. Tennessee gets a 5-star committed to them in football. And, I mean, who knows? We'll see some more stuff coming out. We'll see if any other guys decide to pull a trigger or whatnot anytime soon. But a lot of good positive news for Tennessee football. Guys, before we go, though, I want you all to plug what you have coming up on VR2. That you guys have been doing a lot of work lately. Hasn't been any active sports until the draft, but you guys have been killing it over on the Sports Illustrated family. So, Matt, if you all want to plug some stuff you have on the site and things you have coming up for VR2 as well.
Yeah, so we do have a few things coming up. Nothing major, like you said. No sports. I'm hoping for a return sometime soon when everybody's safe and healthy. But probably tomorrow. I've had it recorded for a few days, but probably tomorrow we'll run an interview with 2020 signee Laneith Whitehead over a Zoom call. We just kind of talk about how his crazy his recruiting process was, the twists and turns, being almost ready to commit at the Georgia State game and then backing off of it and then being ready we really didn't talk about it, but he was probably about to commit to South Carolina in October at one point. And he was ready about making a decision then, backing off of it to December, and then coming back and knowing when he was going to pick Tennessee and talking about some guys he's recruiting, what he's looking forward to the most about getting to campus, who he's looking forward to playing with the most, just different stuff, but a fun little interview. I'll have an interview coming with 2021 3-star tight end Miles Campbell. I'll also be a Zoom call, but it'll be just strictly focusing on his recruiting, how he's handling the COVID-19 shutdown, and he's a guy that I believe whenever the rankings are redone is going to be one of the top tight ends in the country, even more so than he is now. I think he's probably close to being deserving of a 4-star ranking, and he has a lot of schools battling for him. So looking forward to that. And then outside of that, just anything that pops up daily, you can find all of it at si.com/college/Tennessee. And if you want a place to come chat and ask your questions and join in, the community side of it is free, and it's kind of like Facebook as far as what you can do, scrolling down through there, posting statuses and interacting with others. So we'd love to have you come be a part of the Sports Illustrated family.
Well worth it. Those guys, both Matt and Brandon and the entire VR2 network, they do a fantastic job, and I'm again happy for you guys joining Sports Illustrated. I'm happy you guys joined me on the podcast here for the RTI Recruiting Podcast. A great discussion. Hopefully even more good news in the future. We can have you guys back on here to talk about for Tennessee football. They made basketball too. I think Kennedy Chandler, 5-star point guard out of Memphis, is going to be announcing his top 5 soon. Imagine Tennessee is going to be in that along with Duke. I'd be curious to see who else makes the cut, but it seems like Tennessee is getting a lot of good news lately, so that's very good for both the men's and women's basketball programs. They've got some transfers coming in too, and a couple commits, and then in football as well. But signing off for both Matt and Brandon, I am Nathaniel. Thank you all for listening. This has been another episode of the RTI Recruiting Podcast.